Hi, everyone. This is Attorney Lilian with Lily Legal, where we help our clients get status for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. So, today, I want to give you the complete guide to VAWA green cards. Okay, this is everything you need to know about VAWA from start to finish. What are the steps that takes place? What are the things you need to know before you start the process, while you're going through the process, to help give you some peace of mind. Okay, that's what I will be going over with you today. As always, if you would like to schedule a consultation with me, you can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, or reaching out with the phone number 508-443-1788. So, let's get into this. I get so many questions on my VAWA videos, specifically asking what are the steps? What goes first? What comes after this step? I have done my biometrics. What now? So I want to go through the entire steps that you can expect for your VAWA petition, because it is so important that you know what to expect before you start the process, so that you are not in the middle of the process and you are confused. Okay, I want you to know what to expect, and how long each step may take depending on where you are. So let's jump right in. So the first thing you need to know is VAWA is technically, right, Violence Against Women's Act. However, this act does not apply just to women. It applies to everyone: men, women, non-binary, everyone. Okay, it applies to everyone. So while you're thinking about applying for VAWA, do not let the name stop you. Okay, this is for anyone that has been a victim of abuse in their marital relationship with a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. So that is the thing to keep in mind. The relationship has to be with a U.S. citizen or permanent resident in order for VAWA to be a path for you to get a green card. Okay. The next thing you need to know about VAWA is that you do not have to have legal status at the moment that you are filing for VAWA. Okay, you can apply for VAWA and your green card application at the same time if a visa is immediately available. What does that actually mean? So if you were married to a U.S. citizen and suffered abuse during the marriage, a visa is always immediately available. So therefore, you can apply for your VAWA and your green card application at the same time. If you are married to a permanent resident, that's where you have to really look at whether there is a visa immediately available. Okay, if there is a visa immediately available, which right now there is for spouses of permanent residents, you can apply for your green card application at the same time. Now, if you are out of status, you can still apply for VAWA green card. If you came into the U.S. without authorization, that means you didn't come in with a visa. The U.S. official did not parole you into the U.S. However, you don't have anything else other than the fact that you entered the U.S. illegally, you can still apply for VAWA. Okay, so I want to make that clear that it does not require a lawful entry. However, if you entered, let's say you had any sort of misrepresentation, I've seen people that enter with someone else's passport or visa, you're going to need a waiver for that. Okay, so even though with VAWA you don't need lawful entry, if you did enter the US and there was some form of fraud or misrepresentation, you still need a waiver. So just keep that in mind as you're starting the process. So this is the initial stages of things that you need to really think about before you even start. Okay, before you even start applying, these are things you need to think about and make sure it's not going to affect you. Now, the next thing you need to think about is whether you want to apply for a green card at the same time. Like I said, if there's a visa immediately available, you can apply right away. So someone is asking, if I come on a tourist visa, can I change the status to permanent residence? Well, it depends if you meet any of the requirements for permanent residency. So typically you need either a family member filing for you, an employer, or you need to qualify on your own, for example, through VAWA or similar programs, okay? So if you are in that situation where you're filing for VAWA and you came into the US with a tourist visa, you can apply for VAWA without having to leave the US or anything like that. So coming in with a tourist visa, you can definitely apply for VAWA as long as, again, you meet the requirements. Okay. And this question is coming in. I'm going to be answering them as we go along because your questions are the reason that I'm here. I want to answer your questions, so make sure to ask your questions in the comments, okay? So someone's asking, my VAWA was approved August last year. I filed my VAWA and the green card application together. My case was never transferred to the local field office. When I checked my 485, it said it was received by Vermont. Okay, so when your VAWA is approved, I will be going through the stages. This is part of the stages. When your VAWA is approved, it does not mean that it is automatically sent to the local field office. Because if the local field office does not have the capacity to deal with your case right away, it's going to stay at Vermont until the local field office has an interview available. Once the local field office has an interview date available, then the case, your file is given to the local field office. So keep that in mind. I will be going over that when I go through the steps to keep in mind for VAWA. But if it is approved and it's still in Vermont, that just means you don't have an interview date yet. Vermont does not have to send your file to the local field office until you have an interview date. So just because it said it was received does not mean the local field office doesn't know your case is there. Okay. And just to even make it more clear, if your case status says that your case was received, that's what your case status says. However, it will not change to transfer to local field office. So when you check your case status online, at no point will you see where it says case was transferred to local field office, because that's just not how USCIS works. It's not being transferred to, for example, National Visa Center, which is a completely different government department. It's still within Department of Homeland Security, so they don't need to make a distinction between it being at Vermont versus the local field office. I hope that helps with that answer, that question. Now, let's get into the process. So the first part, you make sure you qualify for VAWA, you lived with your spouse, you're either still married, or if you're divorced, your divorce took place not more than 2 years ago. Okay, 2 years from when you are filing. If you are divorced from your spouse, it is, that's what you're looking at. 2 years, not more than 2 years from when the divorce was finalized is the time frame you have to file for VAWA if you're already divorced. If you're just separated, or even if you're still living together, you can still file for VAWA. It's just once the marriage is terminated, you have 2 years from that date to actually go ahead and apply. Okay, so once you apply, you have to show that you and your spouse live together. You suffered either extreme cruelty or physical abuse during the marriage. Those are the things you need to show. Okay. Now, the first step is to actually apply for adjustment of status and the VAWA. That's the first step. You go through, you put together your application and your proof of the abuse, proof that you and your spouse live together, and then go ahead and file. You can file for your adjustment of status at the same time. So your green card can be filed at the same time if there's a visa immediately available. U.S. citizens, spouses of U.S. citizens always have a visa immediately available. If your spouse is a permanent resident, you will have to check to see if there is a visa immediately available. You do that on the visa bulletin, okay? So the next, once you file everything, and I typically suggest if you're filing a green card application, you might as well file a work authorization because you won't be charged an extra fee for that, okay? It's included in the process, so go ahead, file for that. And then you wait for your receipt notice. Receipt notices can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month to come in, so be patient. That's really, when it comes to VAWA and the VAWA process, the key is to be patient, okay? So you get your receipt notice. After that, the next thing you're going to get is either a fingerprint notice, which is the biometrics. You go in, you get fingerprinted by USCIS, have your picture taken, and that's for the background checks, okay? The next thing that may happen from there is a prima facie determination. What does that mean? It just means like a pre-approval, right? The officer has looked at your case and has determined that, hey, this person seems to meet the requirements, right? They haven't really went into detail on your case yet, but based on their initial review, you seem to meet the requirements, so they give you a pre-approval. So that's the prima facie determination. So you seem to meet the requirements. Let's go ahead and give you this determination letter. When you get that, there are benefits to getting the letter. Basically, with the letter, you can get government benefits. Okay, so it's not just that you're getting this letter and your case is moving along. It's that there are benefits that come from getting that letter. The letter lasts a year, so every year, USCIS should be sending you a new updated prima facie letter. Okay, if they don't, that's what we do. We make sure that we're following up with USCIS and you're getting that letter, because if you are getting any sort of government benefits based on the letter, they would want it to be renewed. So do not forget that part. Okay. Oh, and as I'm going through this, if you have any questions, go ahead and just ask me, because I want to make sure that your questions are being answered and that you are getting the most benefit out of these lives. Okay. Awesome. So after that, how long does it take to get to the pre-approval? It really depends. It can be a couple of months to a year. Okay. So the pre-approval does not need to come in order for you to be approved for VAWA. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So just because you didn't get a pre-approval letter yet does not mean that your VAWA will not be approved, or that you will not get a pre-approval at some point. So just keep that in mind. So the next step after you get that is, of course, if you file for a work authorization with your application, which I usually suggest, you would then go ahead and get your work permit. Those typically come 6 to 8 months after filing the green card application and the work authorization. So if you're just filing the VAWA application without the green card application, just know you're not going to get a work authorization. Well, you can't file for a work authorization, okay? And there are situations where you would only file a VAWA application and not a green card application. And I'll go through that at the end, okay? So after you get your work authorization, the next thing that comes is the approval for your VAWA. So that can take anywhere from 2 years to 3 years at this point, okay? Sorry, it is taking a very long time to get the VAWA approval. COVID did not help in that process, because there's only one office that handles VAWA applications because of the confidentiality of the whole thing. So just because and then COVID led to people not being able to work, and that really slowed down the process. So again, while you're waiting for the VAWA approval, patience is the key. Okay, just be patient because it does take some time. So like I said, it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to just get the initial VAWA approval. That is not the green card. Okay, we're still getting to that. So once you have your VAWA approved, you get something called deferred action. Deferred action basically means you can live in the US. We're not going to try to deport you. You're fine here. If you did not apply for work authorization at the initial stage because you didn't file a green card application, now with the deferred action, you can apply for a work authorization. So you're basically waiting 2 to 3 years for that approval and deferred action before you can go ahead and file for a work authorization. Okay. But if you do qualify for a green card from the jump, you should just go ahead and file for the green card at the beginning so that you can file your work authorization. Like I said, that can take 6 to 8 months to be approved versus 2 to 3 years for the VAWA to be approved, and then and then filing for a work authorization, which can still take 6 to 8 months on top of that. So always make sure that you're talking to an immigration lawyer and to see if you qualify to file all those applications at the same time. Okay. So someone is asking, what are some of the benefits to VAWA? Well, for one thing, if you qualify for VAWA, you can apply for a green card and you can apply for work authorization. If you're someone that's in the US without status for a long time, you don't have a work authorization, a social security number, that is a huge benefit because from the time you file your VAWA and the green card application, with the work authorization, like I said, it takes 6 to 8 months for the work authorization to be approved. That means you can get your social, you can get a driver's license, you can work. Okay, so those are just the quick benefits. And then as you are going through the process, you can get your green card. Once you have your green card, for 3 to 5 years, depending on your situation, you can then apply for citizenship. Okay, so that is how those are the quick benefits. Like I said, with the pre-approval, so before you even get to the VAWA being approved, with the pre-approval, you can get some government benefits that some green card holders are not even able to get. Okay, you can get housing benefits because the purpose of VAWA is to protect people and give access to resources to people that have been abused by their spouse that's either a US citizen or permanent resident. So I've seen people that are in need of housing because they were abused and now they're in a shelter. And in order for them to get housing, they need that pre-approval. Without the pre-approval, they will not be able to qualify for any government housing. So that is another benefit of having VAWA. Okay. So after your deferred action, the next step after that is the interview for your green card. Now, that is another wait. Okay, so you have your VAWA approved, you have your deferred action letter, you're good to go, but now you're still waiting for your interview for your green card. And that's where people really get nervous and just don't know what to do anymore because it's been taking so long. VAWA is not a quick process. Some people will tell you, this is the quickest way to get status. Well, it depends on your particular situation. For some people, it is. For other people, it's not. Okay. So for the green card interview, you are looking at maybe another year or two after your VAWA is approved before your green card interview will be held. And then at that interview, the officer will be able to make the decision of whether to approve your green card. If your green card is approved, you will get the physical card typically within a month of that interview. And then you're done with the green card process. You get your green card and you are good. 3 years after you get your green card, you can apply for citizenship. Okay, so that's the process. That's the last step. The last step is the citizenship. So you get your green card, 3 years later, you apply for citizenship, and you get your citizenship, you're all set. Now, things to keep in mind, okay? Things to keep in mind about VAWA. One, even though I've been talking strictly about being married to a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, this also applies for children of U.S. citizens and permanent residents and parents of U.S. citizens. So if you are a parent of a U.S. citizen that's over 21 and your child has abused you and you have documented proof of that, you can apply for VAWA. If you are a child of a U.S. citizen or permanent resident and your parent has abused you, you can apply for VAWA. So this is not just for people that are married to U.S. citizens or permanent residents. It can also apply if the abuse is from a parent or a child that's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Okay. So someone's asking, is it advisable to travel outside, I'm guessing outside the US, when waiting for your approval? Well, it depends. If you want to travel outside of the US and you do not have a current legal status in the US, you will need advance parole. Okay, that is a travel permit that allows you to be able to return to the US. Okay, if you leave the US without advance parole, you are out. You are not able to come back in easily. It's going to take some legal finagling to make that happen. So if you do not have legal status and you do not have advance parole, please do not leave the US. Please do not. Or at least before you make that decision to leave, talk to an immigration lawyer, because depending on your particular situation, there may be options available to you to get that travel document. However, if you already have the travel document, it's really up to you and your risk taking levels on whether to leave the US or not. So just because you have the travel permit doesn't mean that 100% of the time the US government is going to let you back in. However, the risks are lower with a travel permit versus leaving without a travel permit. So if you file the green card application and you leave the US without a travel permit, the green card application is terminated for abandonment. So basically, you leaving without permission means that you no longer want your green card. For VAWA, it is a little different. So you can apply for VAWA within the US or outside of the US. The reason you want to do it within the US is because if you overstay the visa for, for 6 months, but less than a year, and you leave the US without permission, you have to stay outside of the US for 3 years or apply for a waiver in order to come back. If you're in the US for a year or more and you leave the US without permission, you will have to stay outside of the US for 10 years or apply for a waiver. The waivers are not easy to get. So again, if you are already in the US and you don't have that travel permit, stay put. Okay, stay in the US. All right. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. And then, like I said before, if you are trying to decide whether you can apply for a work permit, a green card application, a travel permit, and the VAWA at the same time, talk to an immigration lawyer. Please do not decide this on your own. Okay, this is not a decision you make on your own, because there might be nuances in the law that you do not know about that can end up costing you. Okay, so for example, there are people that are not able to get a green card because they are permanently barred from getting a green card. So you can get waivers for a lot of things, but the permanent bar is not something that can be waived. The only way you waive it is by being outside of the US for 10 years and then applying for admission into the US. So how do you get the permanent bar? You are in the US for a year or more you left the US and then you came back without documentation, so you came back illegally into the US, you are permanently barred. So that's one way. You were ordered deported from the US, you left the US and you came back without any documentation, you are permanently barred. So there are certain ways that you can be permanently barred, and you want to make sure that before you apply for your green card that you are not permanently barred, because if you are, you would not be able to get the green card anyway. So keep that in mind. If you are in immigration court proceedings, 9 times out of 10, you will not be able to apply for the for the green card without also having your case in immigration court terminated. So you can file the green card application, but before USCIS can actually make a decision on it, you need to have that case terminated. Again, talk to an immigration lawyer, because you do not want to miss any of the steps and then not be able to get what you want, which is basically to get your green card and be able to stay in the US without worrying about your immigration status. That's the goal. I always tell everyone that's the goal. The goal is for you to not only get a green card, but to never have to fear US immigration, to get your citizenship and be done with the whole process. Because if you have been through the immigration process, you know that it is not fun. Okay? It is not fun. I enjoy helping people get to that point of getting their green card, getting their citizenship, reuniting with their families, but I know the stress. Okay, I know the stress that the whole process puts people through, puts families through. So you want to make sure you're doing it right the first time, and do not make certain decisions without talking to a lawyer first, because you do not want anything that's going to make it even 10 times harder for you to get your green card and then eventually your citizenship. Okay, so keep those things in mind. If you have any misrepresentation in your immigration history, you've been I've seen people that came in with someone else's passport or visa, people that had findings of fraud, or like on your visiting visa application, you said that you were married when you were not, or you said that you are not married when you are actually married. The other one is when people say that they don't have children, but they do, or they say they do have children and they don't. Those are all misrepresentations that USCIS will want you to do some form of waiver for. So if you have to do a waiver, please make sure you're talking to an immigration lawyer first. Most waivers require you to have a qualifying relative. A qualifying relative is a U.S. citizen spouse, a permanent resident spouse, or U.S. citizen or permanent resident parents. Those are the qualifying relatives for VAWA. And if you do not have a qualifying relative, well, there is an exception for VAWA people only. Okay. So that's why it's really important that, one, you're honest with your lawyer, because if you did have some form of misrepresentation, there is a waiver that's specifically for VAWA people, so that you're still able to eventually get your green card. Know that certain misrepresentations will not affect you being able to get VAWA itself and the deferred action that comes with that. And if all you can do, and I tell people this all the time, if all you qualify for is VAWA, in order to get your deferred action, still apply for VAWA. Just don't apply for a green card. Because this is what happens. You apply for VAWA, you get deferred action, you can get a work authorization. You can live in the US, you can work in the US. Unfortunately, travel outside of the US will not happen for you. However, if you later on do get a qualifying relative, for example, you're now married to a U.S. citizen spouse that would that would suffer extreme hardship if you were required to leave the US or something like that, you can then apply for your green card with the waiver. If you are permanently barred, and let's say in the future there's some of new there's some form of new legislation that says that takes away the permanent bar, or takes away or has a waiver for the permanent bar in the US, you may still be able to qualify for that. So make sure that if you qualify for just VAWA, that you apply for that, because it's still a better status than not having status at all. If you are divorced, or if your spouse has passed away, know that you have to apply for VAWA within 2 years of your divorce, or within 2 years of your spouse passing away, because that's just what immigration wants you to do. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead, ask me. I am happy to answer your questions. I will be doing my live, so be sure to join me. And if there's any topic you want me to cover specifically, go ahead and ask me as well. And I will make sure to do a video on that in the future. So before I go, let me just do a quick rundown of the VAWA process all over again. First step, you want to get your documentations together. Then you want to apply for the VAWA application, the I-360, the green card application, work authorization, and travel permit. Again, if you qualify for work authorization, if you qualify for a green card. Okay. After that, typically within 2 weeks to a month, you will get your receipt notice saying, we received your application and we're processing it. After that, you will get your biometrics appointment to get fingerprinted and have your picture taken by USCIS. And after that, you will get your pre-approval. The pre-approval gives you the right to get some government benefits. So it is really important that if you get that you read it and understand it. So the pre-approval can take anywhere from 6 months to a year from filing for you to get that. It can take longer than a year, so do not be discouraged. After that, you will get your work permit. If you apply for a green card with the work permit option, you would then be able to get your work permit typically 6 months to 6 to 8 months after application. And then you get your VAWA approval, the I-360 approval. That can be anywhere from 2 years to 3 years from the time you file. And with the approval, you will get deferred action, which means you will not be removed from the US. And with the deferred action, you can apply for work authorization if you did not apply for a green card and a work authorization at the initial stage. If you did apply for a green card, the next step is going to the interview. You will be interviewed at a local immigration office, and that comes, again, that can come anywhere from a year to 2 years after your VAWA is approved. And then the final stage in the VAWA green card process is getting your green card. So at your interview, the officer will interview you, ask you questions to make sure you qualify for your green card. They are not going to be asking you questions about the abuse. That's what the VAWA was about. And you were already approved for VAWA, so the abuse will not be asked about at your interview. Then you get your green card typically within a month of the approval. And 3 years after the approval of your green card, you can apply for citizenship. And once you're a citizen, you are done with the US immigration system, unless you want to file for a family member or something like that. But that is your end point in the whole US immigration system, is the citizenship. So I hope you enjoy that and that you got something out of the breakdown of the guide of the steps. You really want to know the process, and I wanted to make sure that I gave you as much detail about the process and the timing of each step, so that you know what to expect and you are not freaking out. Okay, do not freak out if it takes a year or two for your green card application to be processed after your VAWA is approved, okay? Do not freak out. It happens. That's just the processing time. Do not freak out. It is okay. So that is all I have for you today. If you have any questions or you would like to schedule a consultation with me, you can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com. And as always, I am Lilian Chukura. I am the owner of Lily Legal, where we do immigration law and we do it well. Bye for now.